New York City before dawn is like a weary body that has never slept. The sound of bus horns echoes in the distance. The subway screeches underground. The breath of millions blends into the cold mist. At bus stop number 42, Margaret O'Connor, 47 years old, sat alone on a cold iron bench. She wrapped an old woolen scarf around her neck. In her hand, a cheap paper cup of coffee bought from a corner stand. The bitter, sharp smell of coffee seeped in her nose, but could not drive away the sleep weighing heavily on her eyelids. Margaret had been awake since yesterday, but she was not allowed to stop. In her handbag, she kept a brown envelope. Inside was the overdue rent and an unpaid hospital bill. But more importantly, there was also a letter from Boston University stating that Andrew's tuition, the only son she had, for the next semester was due. She smiled when thinking of her son, the boy who once sat in their damp apartment, sketching clumsy pictures of the world outside. Now, he was sitting in a university lecture hall, preparing to become a doctor, something Margaret had never dared to dream of for herself. The first bus screeched to a halt in front of her. She stood up, pulled her coat tight, and stepped aboard. Her body was exhausted, but in her mind there was only one thought. One more day, just one more day. Margaret's first job of the day was cleaning hotel rooms in Midtown. Each room after the guests left was a battlefield. Bed sheets stained with wine, carpets soiled, towels strewn about. She bent her back, scrubbing every stain, folding each towel. "Mrs. O'Connor, today your shift will be 2 hours longer, okay?" the manager said, not really asking. She nodded, lips pressed tight. She always nodded. By noon, when her younger co-workers took lunch breaks, Margaret sat alone in the locker room, chewing on a hard, dry piece of bread. Her tears mixed with the smell of bleach. In the evening, she went to a 24-hour supermarket in Queens, standing at the cashier's counter. The neon lights cast a pale glow on her weary face. Customers rushed through with their groceries, none paying attention to the woman with cracked hands scanning their barcodes. Late at night, when the streets quieted down, Margaret went to a small apartment in Brooklyn, where she cared for a battered-old man. She changed his diapers, cleaned his body, rubbed oil onto the sores on his back. When he finally slept, she sat by his side, chin resting on her palm, her sunken eyes closing for a moment, only to be jolted awake by her phone alarm reminding her to stand and go. Each day of her life repeated this way. 3 jobs, 16 hours of labor, cold meals, restless sleep. Before going to work, Margaret had once been a young, dreamy girl. She loved playing the piano, once dreamed of studying music. But then her parents passed away early, and she had to work, then marry. Her husband left when Andrew was only 8 years old. From then on, she raised her son alone. There had once been someone who pursued her afterward, a gentle man in the neighborhood, also a widower. He once confessed, "Margaret, you deserve someone to take care of you. We could lean on each other." But she shook her head. "I can't. I still have to care for my son. I don't want anything to steer him off his path." She had given up her personal happiness, given up even her dreams. She kept only one thing, Andrew. Her apartment was poor, walls stained and damp. But on those walls hung Andrew's drawings, sketches of hospitals, doctors, and even of her, thin figure, sitting by the window. Every time she looked at those drawings, her heart warmed, even while her body ached. One winter night, while scrubbing the office floor on the 18th floor, Margaret suddenly felt her chest tighten. She collapsed, her breathing broken and uneven. Cold sweat poured out, her trembling hand clutching her chest. The room was completely empty. No one knew. She sat against the wall, forcing herself to swallow the pain. In her mind flashed the image of Andrew studying under the lamp. She whispered to herself, "Don't faint. If I faint, who will send him the tuition tomorrow?" An hour later, when the pain eased, she struggled back to her feet and continued mopping the floor. That night, Margaret returned to her apartment, placed a hand on her chest, and gave a faint smile. "Just let this heart beat a few more years until the boy graduates." In June, Andrew unexpectedly came home after his exams. He stepped into the apartment, carrying his very first certificate of achievement. "Mom, I've been chosen to join the medical research group." "Look," he stopped. In front of him, his mother lay asleep on the chair, her cracked hands bleeding, her lips bluish. On the table, a plate of cold noodles still sat untouched. Andrew panicked, shaking her awake. "Mom, oh God, what's wrong with you?" Margaret opened her eyes, forcing a smile. "It's nothing, son. Just a little tired. As long as you do well in school, that's enough." Tears welled up in Andrew's eyes. He looked around, stacks of unpaid bills, medicine yet to be bought, the worn-out shoes his mother still wore to work. He suddenly understood. Everything he had today was paid for with his mother's blood, tears, and youth. He knelt down, hugging her tightly. "Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't know. I'd rather give it all up, as long as you are healthy." Margaret shook her head, her voice hoarse. No newspaper ever mentioned Margaret. No medes, no divorce. The next day, she returned to her work, boarding the early bus, scrubbing floors, standing at the cashier's counter, caring for the elderly. Still just a frail, middle-aged woman, blending into the hurried crowd. But in Andrew's eyes, in the hearts of anyone who knew her story, she was a hero without a cape. An ordinary mother who sacrificed her entire life, her health, and her fragile heart, only to give her son a chance to step out of the shadows. Margaret never called herself a hero. She only whispered to herself when alone at night. Every parent is like this. As long as the child has a better life than mine, that is enough. And the city that never sleeps kept spinning, carrying away millions of nameless fates. Yet somewhere, among the hurried footsteps on the pavement, walked a quiet woman who carried within her the noblest kind of heroism, everyday heroism. Message: heroes are not only those who appear in newspapers or in history books. Often they are fathers, mothers, silent laborers, ordinary people carrying the weight of the world on their shoulders, never asking for recognition. They have no medals, no spotlight, yet they leave the deepest mark. Unconditional love, resilience in the face of hardship, and the steadfast belief that their children will have a brighter future. Such sacrifice is often so quiet that we only realize it once we are grown, when we look back at their cracked hands or sunken eyes. And it is in that moment we understand. This world is built not by legendary heroes, but by ordinary heroes, those everyday champions, silent yet magnificent.